It works that you have to remember that it's an emotional process and it's not a logic-driven process. At least that's my biggest takeaway from my experience.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Life Up Education TV. I'm here once again with Mr. Alberto. Hi, welcome. Welcome back. Actually, okay, it's good.
Hi, Natsune.
So last time we had Alberto, we spoke about negotiation and more about interpersonal communication skill, right? Like how one can navigate
Right.
through the argument. And then last time was a lot more about like personal communication. Let's focus on business this time. So
Right.
when when we have argument, or even not even argument, let's focus on sales now. Let's say when you needed to sell something, when you're in a position of having to convince someone else,
Mm.
sales, like how does that work in the negotiation dynamic of everything of
Mm. No, that's an excellent question. It works that you have to remember that it's an emotional process and it's not a logic-driven process. At least that's my biggest takeaway from my experience. Um, I've seen a lot of people in my industry negotiate deals and making the same mistakes. At that time, I didn't think it was a mistake. I thought it was the right approach. And later on, I realized it was a huge mistake, which is focusing on what you have, focusing on the product, the service, in our case, the business we have to offer to another, buyer. So
Mhm.
everybody is very much 99% focused on what they have,
Mhm.
and they act very logically, thinking about what is the reason why this buyer could buy my product, but they think for themselves.
Mhm.
They don't try to put themselves in the other person's shoes. They
Mhm.
don't see reality from their perspective,
Mhm.
but they keep stressing over and over the product and the service. So it's an emotionally driven process. So coming back to your question, if you get that, you understand that the reason why a lot of people fail when it comes to sales is because they stay in their word. They don't look at reality from the other person's perspective. They don't try to empathize with them. They don't see the world from their point of vantage, and that's a limit. That's a limit. So um, that's
Definitely
that's
when it comes
that's
to
what we
sales.
do.
Mm. I see. So
Yeah.
what would it be like? How should the conversation look like when you are trying to convince someone in that
Mm.
scenario? Like, let's say you're selling, I mean, whatever the product of your choice.
All right. Well, I guess it depends on the stage in the conversation, but generally speaking, you should be spending much more time listening than you're talking. And it's funny because the stereotypical idea of a salesman is this guy that speaks very well, that dominates the conversation, that talks you into doing a bunch of different things. But that's actually the stereotype. It's not a reality. Successful salespeople, per my experience, are people that are quite calm, pretty silent. They're very good at making the right question. They're very good at listening and understanding someone else's position,
Hmm.
but they're not great talkers. I mean, they can definitely claim to be convincing, but they don't dominate the conversation. And the average salesperson out there is a conversation geek, right? They just want to talk and talk, and we have this idea that simply because someone is outgoing and friendly, they could be successful salespeople. That's a distortion of the reality. Um, you got to make the right questions. You got to listen, and you got to spend as much time as possible, not in your own reality, but in the other person's reality. See the world from their perspective. What's the obstacle? What's the emotion there? What is or what could be the driver triggering them to buy your product, buy your service? And in order for you to do that, you have to listen and you have to make them feel good. Coming back to the previous point from the other conversation, you gotta make them feel heard, make them feel safe environment. People open up.
So,
You know, nobody.
the whole time, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the whole time I wonder, it's like my approach to sales is, the first it's all about promotion. First is all about getting in front of people who could be your potential customers, right? So it doesn't matter if they buy or not. Like, you first need to be aware of your brand, aware of your whatever you're selling. And then the second phase, it comes with the quality of how you're treating the customer in terms of, like understanding their needs and everything like that. But without being known, like that cannot happen anyways, right? So my first approach is, let's reach as many people as possible, and then don't dwell too much on like losses and failure in terms of like, if they're not convinced at that time, like don't spend too much time on trying to convince them, move on to the next. Like that's kind of how I roll usually. What do you think about that? When do you know you should spend a little bit more investing time into this one particular customer who is not convinced, versus like when do you know when to convince, when to focus on moving on?
No, I say it depends on your budget, and it depends on whether you're selling a high ticket item or a low ticket item. If you sell a car, if you sell real estate, if you are into that kind of like high stakes kind of deals, of course, you want to be investing more time. Convincing a client can really make or break your whole performance for the quarter or even for the year. So in those scenarios, obviously, I believe you should allow yourself a little bit more space, a little bit more budget, and invest more. That's the reason why when you walk into a car dealership, they welcome you and they offer you a coffee, right? You get to spend more time. It's not the same type of treatment that you get when you buy a pen or when you buy a pack of cigarettes or whatever, right? But generally speaking, I guess with some differences, your approach is right. But what I was saying can apply to your approach as well. Because even when you advertise a product, when you market a product, the kind of questions that you ignite in your audience brain can make the difference. Do you advertise your product focusing on technicals, focusing on how beautiful your product is? Or do you try to advertise your product focusing instead of the emotions that your product can generate? Trying to understand what's going on in your audiences, your buyer's brain, and try to sell to those needs. It's the same, typical stereotypical example of sell me this pen, right? The average person would just like, oh yeah, it's a great pen, it's beautiful, it's very resistant, it's gonna last you forever. Would you be excited about it? Who cares? And if you say, oh, that's like this pen, you can sign off your $1 million contract, and what do you want to do? Do you want to celebrate $1 million contract with a $1 pen, with my $50 pen? And you're probably gonna feel like, damn, like that's a $1 million contract. It deserves a nice pen, right? It's a very, very like stereotypical example, but really it's all about it, right? So it's talking to the emotions and not to the logic side of our brain.
Yeah, I think that summarized it for today. So Alberto, thank you very much for being on the show today. I had a lot
My
of
pleasure
today. So yeah, thank you very much everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next time.